Okay, what's up, everybody? I'm here with a friend of mine, good friend, Dr. Dave Woynarowski. So I met Dave, Dr. Dave, probably about 4 years ago. We were in a mastermind with Matt Fury, and we kind of hit it off. So, Dr. Dave, thanks for joining me.
Always a pleasure. It's great to see you, Kyle.
Yeah, likewise. So on the Hillsborough and Hunterdon Real, this particular podcast, I interview the top experts in their field, and Dr. Dave is one of the world's top experts in anti-aging and regenerative medicine. So we're definitely going to dive into that and his business and all that. But first, Dr. Dave, kind of just give everybody a quick rundown where you live in, uh, you know, do you have any family? What are you up to? And then we'll start going from there.
Sure, sure. Um, I pretty much fly solo these days. And you may have met my sister. She's my only real close family. Um, I won't get into the details of my personal past life, but I've had most of the experiences most people have had. My domicile is in southeastern Pennsylvania near Amish country, but I travel an awful lot still, even with the whole COVID. I have a stem cell clinic in Guadalajara, Mexico, so I'm down there quite a bit. I do some consulting over in Madrid, Spain. Uh, going to be at a private anti-aging conference in Portugal and Lisbon in January. So I'm usually moving pretty much. When I say domicile, it's I often wonder why I even have a house. Yeah.
You're the traveling man,
But I mean, my house has a gym,
right?
and my warehouse, my business warehouse, has a gym, and my sister's house has a gym, all of which I set up. So
Nice.
it's rolling no matter where I'm at.
Yeah, man.
And we have a great gym in the clinic, of course. So.
Great, man. So the clinic is down in Mexico.
In Guadalajara, yeah, yeah, we can't do what we do in the United States legally because um, the laws are such now that they consider expansion of even your own cells is falls under cellular manipulation or cloning. Ironically, your dog, your cat, your rabbit, your horse could have all this no problem, but not you, but
Not
not
you.
in this country. So we do things a little differently down there. We use a lot bigger cell volumes, and we treat half of our patients are anti-aging patients. The other half are quite sick. So we have a long longitudinal record of helping people with stem cells.
And I know you have, I won't mention any names, but you have some pretty big clients from talking in the past.
Yeah, pretty big as in physically big, and also pretty big as in you know one of the people claims to be as popular as the Pope. So uh, you whatever you consider popular, yeah, we've got some very popular people that you would definitely know and people that you see on TV a lot. And they come to us for a reason because they can't get what what we do elsewhere.
So let's talk about that. So these people come down there, you're highly sought after. I mean, they're leaving the United States, traveling to wherever you're at down in Guadalajara, Mexico. And let's say they don't have disease. What are they coming to you for? The people that aren't disease ridden.
Yeah, they're coming for essentially the anti-aging properties of stem cells. So um, I'll keep it as simple as I can, and I also want to maybe disabuse the audience of something. A lot of people still think that stem cells, oh, you like could grow a new face or a new nose or a new knee with stem cells, and that type of usage of stem cells is still very much experimental. We are actually growing what are called organoids, which are small chunks of organs to replace like livers and kidneys. We haven't been able to get them to the full size of function yet. But primarily, what we see in the clinical usage of stem cells is very potent anti-aging and immune boosting effects. How does this work? Um, One of the big components of getting older, Kyle, is inflammation. And inflammation is something that is, it's a combination of things, a combination of external factors, um, primarily what we would refer to as epigenetic factors, which are not part of your genes, but they're part of the covering of your genes. And the epigenome turns things on and off. And inflammation can cause that epigenome to sort of create a vicious cycle where inflammation goes up and up and up, up. And this ages the body prematurely and it slows down the body's ability to repair And it affects the stem cell mass. It makes them sort of lazy, sort of senile, and not particularly effective. And where this is really important right now, of course, is the whole COVID thing. If your immune system is not particularly functioning very well, you're at a much higher risk of having serious disease from any virus, including COVID. Inflammatory diseases of aging include heart disease and stroke as well. Um, and it's a very poorly recognized and very poorly understood component of most of what we consider Western diseases of aging, such as arthritis, such as heart disease, such as stroke. And of course, you probably know the effects of inflammation long-term on muscle. Old guys like me, if we're not careful, we can get what they call sarcopenia and dynopenia. And sarcopenia is a fancy word for muscle loss, and dynopenia is a fancy word for loss of dynamic, loss of power. And just like back in the day when HIIT was very popular, which I know that it still is. I'm just saying, remember when HIIT was like, oh God, HIIT is everything, there were people saying, this boosts your growth hormone and your testosterone and all this other stuff. It does if you're under 40. After that, so the benefits of exercise never go away, but they become diminished in terms of the anti-aging properties, the anti-inflammatory properties, and the anti-sarcopenia, anti-dynopenia effects. So as we age, some of your audience, certainly my audience, would notice the workouts in the gym are still there, but they don't see it and they don't feel it. And this is somewhat the effects of chronic inflammation and the effects of sarcopenia and dynopenia. And these are considered, and I hate to use air quotes, but they're considered normal, and they're not. At least not at your age, my age, and certainly not. I personally believe that it's not impossible for my generation, especially your generation, to live healthily to be 120, and that means to have pretty much the same bodily functions and strength that you and power that you did. And just an aside, and then we'll get back to your questions. In terms of how do you predict aging, there's a lot of different ways. I'm a telomere expert also. And stem cells and telomeres are intimately involved with each other. So that's another thing when people come to us for stem cells, they're coming down to turn on their telomerase enzyme and rejuvenate their cell mass and improve their immune system and reduce their inflammation. So that's it in a nutshell. But the effects of this can help reverse sarcopenia and dynopenia. And you really kind of got to start making some significant inroads into the whole aging changes of your body, way above and beyond, taking a few supplements and lifting weights. So,
right on. So that's I get a lot of questions on it. So
yeah, I'm yours, brother.
So when people come down there, let's say I came down to see you, and okay, I want these anti-aging benefits. How long am I staying down there for a treatment? How often do I have to come down?
The average person stays about 3 days, and so they'll come in the evening. The next day, they'll get their blood tests, and prior to this, we've looked at their medical records, and we've also asked them, what type of treatment they want. A lot of what we do now is we use extremely young cells. So we used to use our own cells, and then we used to use donor cells as well, and donor cord cells. We never had any issues, but first and foremost, I have young stem cells, but they're not newborn. And I happen to know we have one source now who happens to be one of our doctors who, we use the cord tissue from his childbirth, his wife's childbirth. And we have what's called a bioreactor. So we have Mexico's only bioreactor, and we've been able to literally just continue to grow immortal stem cells in that bioreactor. So we never have to worry about other donors. And some people will still want their own cells for other reasons, but for anti-aging, it's not rocket science that younger cells work better. And what they actually do is they educate your own cells to behave like younger cells. They wake up your stem cells, they wake up, they call to action areas that maybe need to be repaired and reduce the inflammation. And globally throughout the body, they reverse the inflammation. So it's a very simple thing. We would prepare the cells fresh so there's no issues with any kind of chemical preservatives. You would get an intravenous in your arm. We would watch you for one day and then we turn you loose.
And are they feeling any short-term side effects, or are they tired after this, or are they feeling?
Sometimes at night, the night of the therapy, they get like a very mild flu reaction, but that's extremely rare.
Okay.
And it's extremely mild. And we've also kind of modified the protocols. We've been doing this for 12 years now. So we've modified these protocols now to where it's pretty much pain-free and pretty much side effect free. We've never had anything serious happen. But we are in a hospital, a fully equipped hospital. You could do a heart transplant in this hospital in Guadalajara if you needed to. So if anything, if the hits the fan, if it ever does or ever would, there's a full staff of people like that can come to the rescue. But it's a really simple treatment, frankly. The preparation is the thing that takes time, growing the cells and harvesting the cells and making sure that our timing is right so that when you show up, your cells are brand spanking new. So you're getting essentially newborn cells that are just harvested from the bioreactor. And you can't beat that. And you're also getting between 100 million and 200 million cells. I've heard people say, oh, I got 500 billion cells. And I'm like, that's not possible. Because there's a lot of people who are talking about how many cells they get. All of our cells are what are called mesenchymal stem cells, newborn mesenchymal stem cells. A lot of people, when they do cell counting, they don't even know what they're counting. So they're counting dead cells, fat cells, red blood cells, other cells that aren't even part of the stem cell lineage. And these are crazy inflated numbers. I mean, the volume of intravenous fluid you'd have to give somebody to get those numbers that some people are quoting, it's physically impossible. So, like I said, we've been doing this a long time. I know who's BSing and who's not.
Yeah.
That's why we really don't advertise very much. It's word of mouth.
Yeah, and I imagine, like we said, with some of your clients, man, when you get you guys are highly sought after.
Yeah.
So,
And what you would notice, since you're still young and healthy, you notice a couple things. Most people, and again, this is pretty much universal. Within about a week to 2 weeks, you would notice that you're able to work out harder. You'd also notice that your recovery time is faster. You'd also notice that if you did have any aches and pains, that they're either gone or much, much less. Now, how often do people come? I'm going to guess you're what, 40 something?
oh, I'm 39. Yeah.
39. Okay, so you're 39. Once a year.
Okay.
Because it's kind of my company, I'm down there a lot, and I mean, it's I usually do 2 to 3 treatments a year, and I also do some other crazy cell treatments.
For yourself, yeah.
I mean, well, I'm my own guinea pig. We don't treat anybody with anything that we haven't treated all of ourselves.
Gotcha.
So I mean, that's just ethical medicines.
Excellent.
I've had probably 14 stem cell treatments since I started in 2012.
Okay.
And I go usually twice a year now.
Twice a year.
It's a huge difference for me.
Sure. Now, let me ask
You've seen the Instagram, but all of a sudden I'm doing planches and handstands and all kinds of stuff.
you.
I couldn't do when I was 18.
And how old are you now, Dr. Dave?
62.
Wow, good for you, man.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now, I know we've talked about different hormones and anabolic hormones in the past. So for me, right, using testosterone therapy, how does let's talk about testosterone and growth hormone, which people typically, I guess on an entry level think of as far as anti-aging and regenerative medicine. How does that stuff compare? Is that stuff still good in your opinion versus the stem cells?
It's still useful, and let's talk about anabolics a little bit, and we separate growth hormone because growth hormone is not an anabolic steroid. It's essentially what growth hormone does is it causes your liver to make something called IGF-1, which is a growth factor in the body. So it's some of the effects are crossover between the anabolic steroids and the growth hormone, but there are also some different effects. The difference between what an anti-aging regenerative doc would do and a bodybuilder would do is a matter of dosage. We have a dose range. Again, it depends what country you're in, but I'm just going to quote: a normal testosterone level in this country is between 200 something or other units and 700 something or other units. Now, you're probably aware, and I know we talked about this last time, that labs use a very broad base. So if you've got a bunch of 90-year-olds coming in, 200 is normal. So that's why 200 is there. 200 is not normal for you or me. What we like to do as anti-aging docs with all the hormone therapies is we shoot for essentially 35 years old, what's considered optimal, and we consider that optimal. And so for a guy, that would be a testosterone of probably around 700, 650, 700. And growth hormone levels in the neighborhood of 300. So these types of values are not typical in bodybuilders. They're much, much higher in bodybuilders. And what we're striving for is the benefits without the side effects, and also ease of usage. A lot of anti-aging docs use topical stuff. I don't. I never liked it. I always thought injectables were much more predictable and much easier. I never liked taking the stuff and doing like the approaches and sticking them in people's subcutaneous tissue and letting them dissolve, the like almost like suppositories, because you can't change them once they're in there. And it just seems like I always found out that injectables were easy. Some of the orals are not too terribly toxic, so you can use those. But primarily, what we use is testosterone. And testosterone has its own set of side effects. If you keep it physiologic, it makes people feel better, work out harder, and they get a little bigger and stronger, but they're not going to get to be massive. Most of your bodybuilders obviously are going to be using synthetic or semi-synthetic versions of these, and you're taking out of the aromatization, so you don't have to deal with estrogens. I know some of your audience is on this, so they know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially, you don't have to cover yourself with something to protect your prostate and your breast tissue and all those other things. But testosterone is still the gold standard, and most of these things, I can't quote you the potency differences, but I know there's some that are 2 and 3 times more potent. The big issue is when you start using some of these synthetics or semi-synthetics or veterinary dosage, is hepatotoxicity, liver toxicity, and acne, and then of course the central nervous system effects. A lot of people don't know this, and this generalizes to growth hormone as well, but there are more growth hormone and anabolic receptors or sex hormone receptors. This is true of women for estrogen. There are more of these receptors in the brain than there are in the genitals. And so one of the things that you see on somebody who's deficient or not optimal is their mental processing gets better. The other thing that's been fairly clearly shown is that the incidence of diabetes seems to go down, and sugar processing goes better. And in this population of epidemic or pre-epidemic of diabetes that we have, that's pretty important. So you see a lot of guys my age, big guts, no butts, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and I guarantee you they're low testosterone, relatively low, and they're also estrogen dominant. So now you got to deal with that issue of conversion of these anabolics into estrogen derivatives. Some of them convert, some of them don't. So.
Sure. And I remember something I was going to ask you. One of the last times we talked about, because I always tell the guys, one of the things you're going to notice most is how you feel mentally. And you explained that to me with the testosterone receptor, growth hormone receptors on the brain.
Yeah.
With the stem cell treatment, do you get the same effect on the brain? Are they noticing sharper?
No, you do not. It's not a direct effect. It's an indirect effect of feeling better. Okay. But stem cells generally do not cross the blood-brain barrier when you give them intravenously. So if we're treating CNS diseases, like we treat Lou Gehrig's disease, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, Parkinson's disease, even Alzheimer's, these kinds of things, you got to go into the carotid or into the spine to pass the blood-brain barrier. So you do not see the direct effect that you do with the anabolics and growth hormone. One thing just to pass along on the topic of growth hormone. Growth hormone is extremely expensive. And for most people, again, unless you're a professional bodybuilder, most of your bang for buck is going to come from the anabolics. And the rationale for all of this, Kyle, is what are called the pauses. So we could use menopause in women as an example, andropause in men, the drop of anabolic hormones. It's much less predictable in men, but it does happen. Then there's somatopause, drop in growth hormone. That happens also. So as we age, there's not enough to convince everybody, but there's some data to convince those of us who are doing this that this is actually valuable and viable anti-aging therapy. If nothing else, it improves the quality of life.
Mhm.
Does it make people live longer? That's almost, I can't tell you how many times people say to me, you can't prove that it makes you live longer. And I said, you're absolutely right. Because I can't read the expiration date on your forehead. I don't know when you were going to die without it. So I don't know when you're going to die with it. So how the hell can I possibly tell you it makes you live longer? I can tell you it's probably going to improve the quality of your life. And logically, it's going to make you live longer. But we don't have longitudinal data. A lot of what we're dealing with now, anabolics, growth hormone, that they've been around for a long time, but they've been around more in the abuse situation than in the actual clinical usage. Now, stem cells, telomerase therapy, these are really new. I mean, still a decade old, and there's not, they're expensive, so there's not a ton of people that are doing them, and there's not a lot of studies that are really looking at what does this do. But the key, the easy, simple key that anybody can do is combat inflammation. And if you combat inflammation, you are doing at least something significant for aging. You want to reset your stem cell mass, come and see me. You want to turn on telomerase, buy some of my telomerase activators. But now you're into the double and triple digits. Exercise of the proper variety will increase your antioxidant capacity and will suppress inflammation. Too much, and you've got the other side of the coin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I have one of your books here. We're going to go over the other books, Immortality Edge. So, a great book for people that aren't, because I imagine most people are not familiar with telomeres. Can you briefly tell us about telomeres and your specialty with that and what you're trying to do with that?
Sure. The first thing I want to tell you though before I start is I'm always one to publicly admit when I'm wrong. And in 2010, I wrote the book in 2009. It was published by John Wiley, which is a major science publisher in 2010. And I predicted that telomeres would be a household word within 1 to 2 years because of their effect on on aging. Well, I was wrong. There's still an awful lot of people that don't know. And when I lecture on telomeres at the anti-aging conferences, there may be 400 docs or 1,000 docs in the audience. When I ask how many people know about telomeres, less than half raise their hand. And when I ask how many people know their telomere length, less than 10% raise their hand. So this is actually something you can measure. So what is a telomere? Well, in most of your cells, you have what's called a nucleus, and that's where that's where the cell stores your genetic material. All your genes are in these chromosomes, which are structures that basically hold the genetic material. At the tips of those chromosomes is a piece of DNA that, as far as we know, does not code for anything directly. Most of the stuff we've learned that most of the stuff in the chromosome doesn't actually code for as much as we thought. But skipping the silent pieces of the chromosome that don't code for any proteins or anything that you need, or that you need now, maybe you needed it when you were born, but you don't need it now. Every chromosome has a telomere tip. And the simple explanation is that is your biologic time clock. It's like a parking meter. When that parking meter says expired, that cell does one of three things. None of them are good. It either removes itself from your cell mass, and then it cannot contribute to the repair ability of your body. And this happens as we age. Our body reproduces itself. Telomeres get shorter. At some point, a significant number of cells they just check out. They're sitting there doing not much, except contributing to inflammation, by the way, which is another thing that happens when the telomere gets short. But they can't help you build new muscle. They can't help you build new bone. They can't help you restore the neurons in your brain. They can't help you, build your body and keep it in a healthy, what we call homeostatic, sort of in the center of things where it belongs. You can't do that. That's fairly common. Those cells are called senescent. And as I alluded to earlier, when the senescence sounds benign enough, you think of somebody in a rocking chair, and, or, just way down on the Swanee River, but what happens is those cells actually begin to cause inflammation in themselves, and then that inflammation spreads. So aging becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy by spreading inflammation to cells that maybe aren't necessarily going to be damaged by it of their own. So that's what senescent cells do. There's a big enough senescent cell mass, number one, you don't repair well. Number two, you become more inflamed. And it's a vicious cycle. The other thing that can happen is the cell can blow up and commit suicide. That's called apoptosis. That's actually a preferable thing, because if you've got enough stem cells, which you can have if you come see me, then you basically can repair those things with new cells. So the cell gets checked out. The body's very efficient at recycling pieces of the cell that it can use. And then those raw materials go into the supporting new cells. And those cells are new and healthy, generally speaking, if your stem cell mass is young enough and strong enough to function the way it should. Again, we're sort of getting to the very basis of stem cell therapy for anti-aging mass. That's what we do. We re-educate your stem cell mass. We make your stem cells behave like they're younger. We turn on your telomerase enzyme to keep your telomeres longer. So all those things happen with stem cell therapies. The final thing that can happen is that for some reason the cell escapes what's called a cellular checkpoint, and it keeps getting a shorter and shorter telomere. And then the DNA basically starts to unwind, and this becomes a high risk for cancer. So genomic or genetic instability associated with telomere loss is pretty well. It's documented as a cause of cancer. So that's why you want to keep your telomeres long.
Yeah,
healthy. Yeah.
Now, a question going back to the apoptosis. When they recycle themselves, is that the same thing as autophagy? When autophagy happens?
Well, apoptosis is the description of exploding. Autophagy is what should happen afterwards, whereas the cell comes and gets. If the cell is sick, it should be eaten by one of your immune cells. Again, back to your stem cells producing immune function cells, those cells come out and they chew up the sick, dead, and dying cells and recycle the thing. So that's autophagy, is the function of self-eating or having other cells help the cell destroy itself. Apoptosis just refers to the series of events that causes that cell to blow up. What happens afterwards, that should be the phagocytosis and the autophagy and other things that now take that sick, dead, or dying cell and recycle it back into useful material.
Right. Okay. Now, I want to make sure we go over some success stuff too with you. But one more question with the telomeres. Let's say, we're going to plug, where they can get all your materials and access to your information. But let's say they can't come down there to see you right now. What's one or two things people can do to benefit their telomeres?
My very first area of expertise, you may remember, was omega-3 fatty acids, aka fish oil. If people take a fairly high dose of fish oil, which is I say 4 to 6 grams of EPA DHA, not 4 to 6 grams of fish oil, because a lot of the fish oil has got a lot of crap in it. You want to look for those 2 essential fatty acids, EPA, DHA, and they should add up to between 4 and 6 grams, depending on how much inflammation you have, how much body aches you have, and how lousy your diet has. This is not a function of body mass. This is strictly a function of diet. If you got a really crappy diet, you might need more. If you eat a lot of fish, you might need less. That's one thing that's relatively affordable. And there's been, just even within the past 2 months, there was definite association with higher doses of omega-3 in healthy people and longer telomeres. Prior to this, it had always been in sick populations. Medical, most publications get published on illness and disease first, and then much later they talk about healthy people. So there was plenty of data on heart disease and hypertension and all that other stuff, and longer telomeres and fish oil, keeping people out of the hospital, lowering medicine. But there wasn't a lot of data on healthy people. The first study on that actually came out this year, associating high levels of omega-3 with lower levels of inflammation, of course, and longer telomeres. So that's the easy one. I make a telomerase activator. It's not cheap, but you can't get it anywhere else. I don't want to say I invented it, because Mother Nature invented it, but I found it. So
Pill form, or?
It's in pill form, yeah. Yeah, and actually we're on our third iteration. We continue to, almost every penny I made on that went into improving the product. The one that's coming out during Christmas, during our Christmas sale and afterwards, that one is several times more potent than what would be considered the gold standard telomerase activation pill. And I don't want to get too deeply into what it does other than turning on telomerase, because we've got studies on it for a lot of other fascinating things. And it's an amazing compound. And right now, we finally got it to where I want it.
Nice.
Right there. So I'm piloting it right now, and then we're going to turn it loose probably either during the Christmas sale or soon afterwards.
Great. And then, I'm sure people are going to be interested. So we'll definitely get.
Yeah. And that's a really big thing. That plus fish oil and a good multivitamin will get you a long, long way. And of course, your programs for exercise and, that kind of thing.
Excellent, man. This is exciting. This is exciting.
It's a magical life, man.
Yeah, it's great.
Literally, this is what I've wanted to do since I was 5 years old, and it just gets better and better and better. And thank goodness the way I'm rolling at this point, it looks like I'm going to be around for a while, God willing. At least I'm not going to die of some disease or some infirmity. And in some ways, I'm stronger now and much better now than I was even 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah,
I can do things functionally that I couldn't do then. Maybe I'm not benching as much because I'm not benching much, or maybe I'm not squatting 500 pounds anymore because I'm just doing Hindu squats, and running. But, the functional aspects, as we get older, I think the functional aspects are become a little more important in healthy aging.
Yeah, right on. So I want to dive that. I agree with you 1,000%. So I want to.
That was actually a question I had for you. Is you've been in this business for a long time. What have you seen as you've quote unquote aged? What has changed about your workouts and about how you approach fitness in general?
Yeah, so it's kind of what you were just saying. No longer is my goal. I mean, I actually weighed myself for the first time yesterday in probably 5-6 months, and sitting right at 220. Which now the last time I competed, I was 217. Now I don't look like that, and that's not my goal anymore. Is to have these big muscles, but it's a functional strength. I go to jiu-jitsu a couple days a week and just being able to perform.
That's functional.
Yeah, and that's what I'm all about. And my strength, to be honest, Dr. Dave, is as strong as it's ever been, even though I don't have as much puffy muscle as I like to say, but I feel good.
Well, I mean, aesthetics, as you know, I'm about to start another coaching, my first coaching program in 11 years. And the lowest tier is the fitness aspect of it. And some people are electing to do the aesthetic arm of that.
Sure.
So, I mean, I can make you look great, but I'm not going to tell you that you're going to be as strong as you're going to be if you do something else. This is when I say it's an aesthetic arm, it's strictly aesthetics.
Sure.
You'll look phenomenal, but you're not going to actually be that strong. You're going to look strong as hell, but you're not going to be that strong. And some people, want that.
Yeah.
As opposed to, maybe they look stronger, but they're a little thicker, not as lean, and not as, that kind of stuff. Or, if your goal is not to do a handstand, maybe you want to just be able to, fix your posture, and walk around, without having back pain and shoulder pain and all the things that can happen from sitting. Maybe that's your fitness goal. So we start where we start, but there are different arms of fitness, as you know.
Yeah.
And aesthetics is different than strength, and strength is different than functional.
Yeah.
I don't dislike lifting weights, but I don't do it much anymore. It's just not.
Yeah, I get
what what gets me, I'll give you a very interesting example. You probably know my buddy JC Santana, has been in the
Yeah.
business forever.
Yeah.
JC told me one time, he said, bench press, okay, it's been shown that, and I might misquote the percentage, so I'm going to make up a percentage. It's let's say you can bench press, you can only apply that in a standing push with about, I'm going to say 55% of your body weight.
Yeah.
So if you can bench 500 pounds, um, your body weight is actually what's more important at pushing somebody away.
Yeah.
Or that's why the linemen are like 350 pounds and the running backs are 195. It's a different usage of strength. But so building a huge bench is not necessarily functional.
Yeah.
I will say that squat strength, quadriceps strength particularly, is associated with longevity. So there are reasons to have strong quads, but you can get them many different ways.
Yeah. And I imagine that's probably centered around tying into the hips.
It is tying into the hips and posture, and also just the large muscle mass and its effect on hormones.
Sure.
Even after you pass 40, there's still some systemic effect on things like andropause, reducing sarcopenia and dinapenia with these big muscle group exercises. Quads being big muscle groups.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, that's fascinating. So you got a lot of stuff going on. So
Yeah.
plug that. Let me ask you a couple, because we're going to have to obviously do a part two after for you. So let's talk about success real quick. So when you were 5 years old, you knew you wanted to do this. Where did that inspiration come from?
Well, I can remember, I'm not sure, I have a photographic memory, but it's only photographic for stuff that's important to me. So like, the women in my life, I can remember every conversation I've ever had with them forever. Some of the stuff like in school, I don't remember that. But the stuff that I do for a living, I remember this. And I remember, I don't know if there was even anybody around, but I remember being in my mother's room in our old house where I grew up at age 5. And I verbally said, I want to be a doctor, a scientist, and an inventor. I don't think there was anybody listening. I think I said it to myself. About 5 years ago or so, I thought to myself, I did it. I'm all those things. I started out as a doctor, and then, obviously I became a scientist during that. And now I'm an inventor and a scientist and a doctor. So that all kind of came to pass. And but when I was 5, when you're 5, you're just a kid, you're like, oh, this is what I want to do. The world is your oyster. You think you can do anything. But, it's so funny. If we could program ourselves, I call this allowing. If you allow yourself to be great at something and you analyze maybe what's holding you back emotionally before you even start a project. I had to do some emails last night for someone else. I agreed to promote something. And I also had an email that I was writing that featured heavily on COVID. And I know that, when I voice my opinion on certain things, I'm going to get a lot of blowback. And I noticed some internal resistance to both of those things. I didn't want to do them. And no, clear that out. I play guitar. I've played the guitar off and on since I've been in my late 20s. A year or two ago, I had an epiphanal moment where I said, I need to allow myself to be great at this. And went through the roof. So, this programming that we have as children where we're not shut down and we allow ourselves to believe that we can do those kinds of things. It doesn't go away as an adult. It's just you've got all this other programming in the way and all these other responsibilities. But I would tell anybody, whether it's strength or fitness or longevity, start programming your brain to believe that these things are real and can happen, because we are living in the time where we really can now buy some runway. And with each chunk of runway that we buy in our lives and our health, there's more and more and more. And if stick around long enough, be healthy long enough, the next big thing's coming. Gene therapy is coming as something that we can all do. Right now, it's stem cells is cutting edge. Then it's going to be gene therapy. Then, I don't even want to predict what happens after that. It could get scary. But the point is that, we are living in that time, the first time in human history where I know we can extend health span. You and I are going to be much healthier than our parents. And it isn't because we're not facing some issues right now. It's because of the knowledge base. Look at what you've learned as a trainer. I got my training certificate originally in like 2007. And I recerted or recerting now. And it's like, my God, the stuff they're talking about now, it's almost med school level. It's just so much knowledge. When I was in high school, we had a football team, and you had coaches teaching them lifting, and that high school now and their football program is probably far more advanced than the NFL was when I was in. I mean, this explosion of knowledge and useful knowledge, and people are very pragmatic now. They throw out the stuff that Bruce Lee, get rid of what doesn't work, keep what's so.
Yeah.
This is what you and I are. This is why I want to stick around.
Yeah. Last one, and then we're going to tell people where they can find you and get in touch with you and dive into all your stuff. 5 years from now, what do you see yourself? Where are you at? What are you doing?
Well, if I'm not careful, I'm going to be in diapers because I keep getting younger and younger. But no, I would just do more of same. I haven't even scratched the surface about some of the stuff that I've invented that's bordering on coming to the market, some new patents, both medical and supplement. I'll continue to be curious and to learn, and I'll continue to apply, and I'll continue to try my best to be like Bruce Lee. You got to keep what's useful and discard the rest. And maybe you've seen this too, Kyle, but the older chronologically, because physiologically I can measure my telomeres. I'm in my 40s, telomere wise, and it's going the right direction. Maybe in 5 years I'll be 39 or something like that. Physiologically, doesn't mean I might not have some gray hair or some other stuff, but functionally I'm going to be able to perform. My cells are going to be able to perform at that level. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to being 5 years smarter, and at this point, 5 years more wise as well, not just smarter, but more wise. And the way things are going that way, that's really exciting to think about. Yeah. Sharing that knowledge with people, and having the tribe, my tribe, your tribe, grow, and seeing how we enrich each other. And essentially, we're escaping programming. We're escaping a lot of negativity of the rest of the world by being positive about our futures. How about you? Where do you see yourself?
Yeah, I see. Got a lot of different projects I'm working on. I see the impact growing as far as worldwide reach. Stuff me and you have talked about in the past, but now it's I'm full go on that. The gyms I've got a great team, so they're running. Pretty much, I'm going to say without me 100%, but they're running, they're going smooth, and maybe having another kid. We got 3 now, so maybe having a 4th, that would probably be sooner than 5 years. But
awesome.
Yeah, and just being, having fun, man, and looking to see what the world is in 5 years as far as being a more beautiful place as opposed to this craziness we're in right now. I think there's a bright thing on the other side of this once we get through it. So that's
I mean, I don't mean to. Some people take this the wrong way, but 2020 was not a bad year for me. It was a bad year for the world. It was one of my better years, and so if I can thrive in this, I think I can thrive in anything. And I really believe that again, good fortune, good luck, and curiosity. I mean, just being curious. That's what keeps me getting up in the morning. I'm so curious to see what the day brings and what I'm going to learn, what new thing I'm going to learn. And, it's not like I sit down and say, okay, I'm going to learn X, Y, Z. Sometimes I do, and I do learn that. Sometimes I just learn something else, or sometimes I just learn something about myself. And, I can't say enough about allowing and being curious. Allow yourself to be that child again. Allow yourself to be curious and get out of your own way, And I think we both do that to a large degree, which is why we're thriving in this so-called chaotic, crazy environment. There's a lot of changes.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of belief systems are being shown to be not believable
Yeah.
anymore. But does it affect the core of who we are as human beings? Not you and me.
Nope. No. Can't touch that.
You can't touch it. Exactly.
Well, listen, where can people find out more about you? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you? I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very interested in what you were talking about.
as fate would have it, I'm doing more of these kinds of things. So just keep your ear to the ground. But the easiest is to just go to the website, which is www.the longevityedge.com. So www.thelongevityedge. And the books you showed, that was The Immortality Edge. This is the Korean version of The Immortality Edge. It was published in Korean. Lengthen Your Spine, Lengthen Your Life. That one dates back to 2006. Secrets of Maximum Muscle Development, Volume 1 and 2. This is 2007. And let's see, we got 6 Weeks to Super Fitness. That's 2009. And the most recent one, The Keto Edge. This is August of this year. This one is on Amazon along with the Immortality Edge. Both of those are on Amazon. The rest of this stuff cycles back and forth from my site and my coaching programs. So,
Excellent, man. Excellent. And if they're interested in your coaching programs, they can find that from the site as well.
We have a customer service number and email there, and sign up for my emails. And I again mention them. And what happens, of course, is they fill it almost immediately, and then
I'm surprised.
I don't do them again for another 9 years or whatever. So,
Yeah.
it's time. It's definitely time. 9 years is a lot of information I can share with people.
Oh yeah, man. That's excellent, man. Well, this has been awesome. We definitely got to set a part 2 because again, I've got a whole list of questions already.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm yours, brother. Always a pleasure.
let me bring this to a stop, man.